Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Michael Kelly, and joining us this evening from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Philip Bywater. We warmly welcome the family of Private William Edward Newson, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and students on behalf of the following schools. From Western Australia, Bunbury Cathedral Grammar School, and from Queensland, Pittsworth State School. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Students, you can be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had done, had endured, and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private William Newson. Known as Bill to his family and friends, William Edward Newson was born in 1880, one of 6 children of George and Ellen Newson, of what is now known as Mitchell in Queensland's Western Downs. He was brought up by his mother and older siblings following the death of his father the year after his birth. William attended state school in Warren before the Newson family moved to Trangie in the New South Wales Orana region, where William worked as a labourer. He was fondly remembered by the community as well-known and of a very humorous disposition. William Newson enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force at Wodonga in Victoria in March 1915. After a period of training at Broadmeadows military camp, he embarked for Egypt as an original member of the 24th Battalion in May 1915. After several weeks' training, the 24th Battalion sailed for Gallipoli, where it joined the rest of the Australian 2nd Division in reinforcing parts of the line along the beachhead at Anzac Cove after landing on the 4th of September. The battalion spent most of its time on Gallipoli near Lone Pine before it withdrew to Mudros and returned to Egypt after 2 months on the peninsula. The 24th Battalion spent the following months training in Egypt as the AIF prepared for fighting on the Western Front. Arriving in France in March 1916, the 2nd Division spent its first weeks in the new operational theatre in the relatively quiet sector outside the town of Armentières on the Franco-Belgian border. Troops of the 24th Battalion carried out patrols of no man's land and carried out raids on the German trenches in preparation for their first major offensive effort. In July, the 2nd Division moved south to the Somme and entered the line near the village of Pozières, which the Australians had captured just days earlier. Taking the village had pushed a significant bulge into German lines, allowing German guns to pour devastating fire onto the village from multiple sides of the battlefield. The 2nd Division entered the line at Pozières on the 27th of July 1916 and began preparations for an assault on the German defences east of the village. Known as the OG lines, these were a formidable network of trenches that dominated the high ground of the area and impeded any further progress. Capturing these defences would allow the Australians to take the high ground surrounding Pozières and push north towards the heights of Tipva. The 24th Battalion assaulted the OG lines the following evening in what was ultimately a costly and unsuccessful assault. German machine gun crews were alerted to the Australians as they formed up before the attack began, opening fire on them and inflicting a heavy toll. The supporting bombardment was not strong enough to overwhelm the German defences, and assaulting troops were caught out in the open by rifle and machine gun fire before being driven away. By morning, the 2nd Division had lost over 3,500 men as casualties, and the OG line remained in German hands. Among the casualties lost that night was William Newson, who was listed as having been killed in action. The historical records do not tell us how he died that night, but we do know that his body was recovered and later buried at Coquelet British Cemetery, where he rests today. He was 36 years old. William Newson's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private William Edward Newson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozier or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today, and thank you.